I would wake up, in the middle of the night over the years we were designing this, wondering if we were going to be the firm that ruined the Space Needle.
We were quite anxious about different points of the project, about how things were headed or the problems we had to solve, and it's always there. You walk out your door, you see it. You walk in your dog, you see it from our office. It's not one you can escape from, so it's always on your mind, physically and visibly.
Alan Maskin and Blair Payson, both co-owners of the Olson Kundig architecture firm in Seattle and leaders on the recent redesign of the Space Needle. They're going to tell you about how this project came to life, because it originally started as just a new website. But first, if you haven't seen any of these renovations yet, I'm Hannah Everman with KOMO News. Check this out. This is the Space Needle's new Skyliner elevator, the first of its kind in North America that was unveiled to the public in May as part of a $100 million modernization project. It's a double-deck, floor-to-ceiling glass elevator that lets you take in the stunning views of the city as you travel the 41 seconds to the top. When it opens, you step out onto the world's first rotating glass floor on the lowest level. Up top, you've got the floor-to-ceiling glass barriers with integral glass benches on the observation deck. The new design is meant to re-establish the Needle as an observation tower and give visitors unparalleled views of the city.
Yeah, a big part of the Century Project as it got going was both the visitor experience, but then also the realization that for it to really last 50 more years or to be in a really good spot for 100 years, it was a whole systems evaluation as well, right? There were all these pieces that were in our world, the end of their useful life. So things like the electrical, the air conditioning, the elevator systems, the revolving floor, all these pieces really needed evaluation and really led to a rethinking of what the entire project and visitor experience could be.
It might be helpful to start with how it began and then what it became. Absolutely. And so a friend of ours named Dave Rosenkrantz was working in a graphic design firm or advertising firm in Seattle. And they were working with the Space Needle team to develop a new website. And they wanted it to be an interactive website. And so they kept saying, you really should have some architectural expertise on this project. And Karen Olson, the current COO of the Space Needle, was like, what will we need that for? Why do we need an architect? So she was literally just checking that off her list. But she interviewed me, and I came in and I talked about ideas, and that I had studied in architecture school with one of the original designers of the Space Needle. And I planted the seed that perhaps this project could be more than just a website, and it could be something larger. And it turned out that they were actually thinking about that. And Karen, in conjunction with the CEO, Ron Siebert, were imagining how they might create an entirely new visitor experience for the Space Needle. And frankly, what they were discovering was that there were declining sort of revenues and attendance, and they needed to do something big for the future that would really guarantee that they were about the future.
The Needle is a huge tourist attraction, but what about Seattleites? I've lived in Seattle for over 10 years, and the last time I was up in the Space Needle was 2013. I never thought I'd visit again until I came up for this story. It's so cool up here, and something I definitely want to go do again.
I think your reaction to it was actually exactly what the Space Needle was hoping to have, which is not only that you would want to come here, but you would want to bring all your visitors here, and that you would actually come multiple times, and there was reasons to do that. There was a rotating restaurant floor in 1962. It was the second one in the world. Same architect did another one in Hawaii. But perfected it here. But it was 54 years later, and you would sit on that restaurant, and you could feel the motor like jerking. And our assessment was that this building had reached the end of its useful life in many respects, and so it was time to completely redo it on a lot of levels. But there also was a chance to do something that had never been done before, just like in 1962, by taking that rotating floor, completely re-engineering it, and turning it into the world's first rotating glass floor, a 90-foot diameter glass disc that moves 500 feet in the air. That's an entirely new way to observe cities and to actually create an observation tower.
One of the pleasures of the project was the ability to connect with at least one of the original design team members. That was Gary Noble Curtis, a structural engineer. And it was just an insight into the process of, how all kind of encompassing that 1960 effort was. I mean, it was designed and built in just over a year. And so when you think about that now, I mean, that's just crazy.
We often talked about working on a construction project like this one in the short period of time that we were working on, and that it's a construction project that's 500 feet in the air, and we liken that to, like, we might as well be in outer space. There was a crane up there that would lift up some of the heavier pieces. There were 3 elevators, and that was basically what brought hundreds of people up to work on the project. And the project never closed. So the Space Needle was always open while the construction was going on, and people could actually observe the construction. Before the project started, Blair and I came up, and we do this on any new remodel project. You have to evaluate the building. You have to look at it, not only like the public spaces, but crawl underneath the floor and the plenums and look at the systems, or climb up on the roof and actually evaluate its condition. And the 2 of us put on hazmat suits and crawled underneath the rotating restaurant at the time, and we're on our hands and knees, and we saw a little glow of light, and we crawled over to it, and there was a hole in the metal floor, and we looked through it, and Blair had a camera, and he put the camera through and took a photograph, and it was a view down the tower of the elevators going up and down. And we realized that that's a view that nobody ever saw. And so this was a chance to actually design and reveal parts of the original design that had never been seen before.
That was the beginning of the project really going to another level, because it was the chance for really one of the ownership team members to have a visceral connection back to experiences that he remembered as maybe an 6 or 8 year old going to the construction site in the 60s, looking over the edge. And it's amazing how those experiences, they lodge in your mind, right? And so when he saw that photo and actually experienced it himself, he went down and looked through the same hole. He was taken back to that moment 60 years ago, just like that, right? And so it was the beginning of the project really taking another step and being something totally new. The Space Needle has always been about looking out to the distance and the view beyond, but now it's also about looking down and also looking at itself. And so when you look through the revolving glass floor, for example, you see the tower legs splaying out below you, see the elevators coming up, you see the mechanism of the revolving floor. And now with the elevators, when you come up the elevator, you've got the view out to the distance, but you also have glass in the back of the elevator, so you can look at the kind of core of the building as you go up. And so the whole theme is that you both have the view, but you also understand the building in a totally new way. And in a sense, just have a much greater connection and understanding of what the building is.
And of anything I have ever designed in my entire life, this building is by far the most visceral in terms of how people use their entire bodies to engage. They will climb up on these glass benches. They will lean into the wall. They will be spread out, having their pictures taken and documenting their friends and their families all over the entire building on the glass floor. And there is a sense of global delight. You hear languages from all over the world as you walk around here, and this incredible sense of just joy that they have in this experience. And it's hard to underscore how significant that is as designers of public space.
And just to listen, I'm hoping you pick this up on your cameras, but you hear laughter, you hear kind of glee, and Alan often has this example of, you'll hear people say things like, "Come on, Grandpa, you can do it." People find their limit and then they push past it because they're encouraged by their family or their friends or even strangers. And it's a unique building in that sense that you can kind of find the edge and then you push a little bit further, and you have an amazing experience.